I think that's a very easy way for people to start saving up.
Back in our country, we used to save cash. Right?
Yes, exactly. Yeah, they would either save up in cash or they would save
hiding
up
under pillow.
under the pillow, maybe put it in a bank account, or then
Just a joke. What is 401k and why they need to have it?
I was working for Dell in a big corporate. They had access to a 401k. So I was like, okay, what is a 401k? I didn't even know about this. The goal of the 401k is really for you to save up for retirement. You can start doing this when, as soon as your child's born. But like I said, the benefit is that you don't have to pay tax on any of the gains in that account. How much money you want to diversify your investments, you want to market versus into like maybe bonds versus into like holding on in terms of cash. The CD is a relatively low risk way to get interest back on an amount of money that you want to put aside. So Treasury bills it almost works like a CD. Interest rate is generally low because the risk is very low.
Do you really want it or you really need it?
Yes.
If you want it, we can skip it. If you need it, we can buy it.
Yes.
I wish I knew about investment. Hi everyone, I am Aytekin here, welcoming you from Verso Talk podcast show that aims to feature immigrant investors, founders, and Fortune 500 tech leaders to share their journey, talk about money, investment, fundraising, business, and career growth to help immigrants to become financially free and successful leaders. Today, we have an amazing guest. Her name is Dipti, and Dipti Arora is a seasoned finance executive within the technology sector with over 2 decades of experience in finance and accounting, currently serving as a vice president of finance at CircleCI, prominent late-stage technology startup. Dipti's professional journey commenced in public accounting and ascended through the corporate finance ranks with her expertise in financial planning and strategy. Welcome to the studio, Dipti. Very nice to have you.
Yeah, I'm so excited to be here. Thank you for having me.
Thank you, and I appreciate your patience to help us to go through all these technical processes.
Yeah, no problem. It's a part of the process.
Appreciate your help with it. So I introduced you, but I would love you to tell about yourself, maybe something that I missed to say about you.
Yeah, I know you introduced my my corporate and professional journey right now, but I think what I wanted to mention is that I wanted to touch into a little bit how I got here to the US. I'm originally from a small country in sub-Saharan Africa called Zambia. I was born and grew up there. And then I originally moved to the US for grad school. And so I think just being in a different environment was really eye-opening to me. Like that was really the start of sort of my financial journey and my investing journey. And then, after grad school, I went to grad school doing my MBA with a concentration in finance. I went into the corporate world, and then I sort of grew from there, like in my journey in finance. And I moved a little bit back and forth between different countries. I took a job stint back home in Zambia after I'd moved to the US, and then now I've been in the Bay Area for the last decade.
Oh, wow. Interesting. So what motivated you to go back and then come back?
Yeah, I actually went back to just be closer to my family. My mom was having some health issues at that point in time, and then I decided to move back and take a job opportunity there. And then I moved back to the US really for like a career opportunity that I landed over here. And in terms of career growth and I've always been passionate about finances, being independent in terms of managing my finances. And I knew that was not going to be possible being in Zambia, and that would only be possible if I was here in the US.
So US needed you.
Yes.
We all need you here. I grew up in a small city of Azerbaijan where also I learned how my mom saves money for our education, for future, etc. But professionally or in educational level, I never had a chance to learn about investment, fundraising, saving, finance. I just learned whatever I saw my mom was doing. And I started to learn about all these terms, especially technical terms in Silicon Valley, like what is investment, VC world, etc. All this. So you are amazing guest to educate women on finance, what they need to know maybe in America, especially if someone just came, what they need to know about the financial system in America that is different from most of the developing countries, not telling like Europe.
Yeah. I think there's, the good thing about the US is that a lot of the infrastructure is available, especially as an independent person. It's there to help support you. So I'd encourage like people who are coming and new to this country to really educate yourselves on that. Like even just reading up stuff online is very helpful. I think what helped me actually right after grad school, it helped that I was in finance itself. So I was always kind of aware of that. And when I grew up, my parents always pushed me, even as a woman, to always be like, as a girl, to be financially independent and to not be reliant on like another male in the family ever to understand finances or to know about finances. My dad always like would walk us through things that he was doing and his background around why he was doing that. So I had a little bit of a push already and curiosity to learn about it. But when I started working here, I thought it was relatively easy to get set up on some things. I was obviously fortunate enough to like get into the corporate world right after my grad school. So there were small things that were just available that I didn't even have exposure to before, right? Like your 401k. I was working for Dell in a big corporate. They had access to a 401k. So I was like, okay, what is a 401k? I didn't even know about this. So I started asking questions. I researched the materials that had been provided to me by my company.
You mentioned about 401k. That was something brand new for me here as well. For immigrants who are watching us, they just came, they don't know what is 401k. Would you mind to explain them, maybe briefly? I know it's a huge topic, just to tell them what is 401k and why they need to have it.
Yeah, so 401k is really a plan that's provided by your employer as a means to save up for your retirement. So the way the 401k works is that it's optional, but your employer will allow you to put a part of your paycheck towards this thing, which is called the 401k, which goes into some investment firm like, Schwab, Fidelity. There's so many investment firms out there. And generally what they do is they will take that money and they end up putting it into a fund, a mutual fund or an ETF. And there's very specific funds generally that are dedicated towards the 401k. So the goal of the 401k is really for you to save up for retirement, because generally you can access the money if you need to before you retire, but there's some tax implications there. But really the goal is that you would keep investing in it as a means to put aside money for when you eventually retire, and then you're able to withdraw that money and as you need it after retirement. Mm-hmm. So I think that's a very easy way for people to start saving up for later on in their life, and also educate themselves about the market itself.
Mm-hmm. Since we are talking about saving, thank you for educating immigrants on this topic. There is also saving for kids' education.
Yes.
So can you please talk a little bit about that too? I want to help immigrants to first learn about saving options in opportunity.
Yes.
It's not like back in our country we used to save cash, right?
Yes, exactly. Yeah. It was cash or property. That's it. Yeah.
But that's different in America. That's why I want all immigrants to know about the opportunities, the ways they can save their money.
Yeah, I mean, that's what I was saying. Like, I think the benefit of being in a developed country is that the financial infrastructure is so built out here. There's not just like you're saying cash. Even I know back home, like my parents, the way they saved was they would either save up in cash or they would save
hiding under pillow.
Hide it in a pillow, maybe put it in a bank account, or then
just a joke.
Or then they would, like my parents, the other way that they saved up was like to buy other properties, like investment properties that they would like give out on rent, or they would just hold on to the property. Hopefully it would appreciate at value by the time they need to retire. But here there's so many options. Like there's the entire stock market, right? But I think some of the ways you can easily invest, and one of them is the 401k. And if you're working, generally your employer will provide you access to the 401k. Whether they match your contribution or not, which I can talk about as well, is different. But even if they're not matching it, you're still allowed to put a certain amount of your paycheck. There is a cap on the maximum amount you can put, and there you can do that. There's also, I think it's called 501b, but the way you can save up for your kids' education too, and you can start doing this when, as soon as your child's born, you can put aside a certain amount of money in this account that's called the 501b account, which you can open up. You can open up through any brokerage account that you might have. Sometimes employers also help you open up this account, but even if that's not something that's available through your employer, you can do it through any brokerage account that you have. And I'd encourage you, as a means to saving, like for immigrants, go ahead and open up a brokerage account, right? You can do that there's so many brokerages now available. It's so easy to do with the likes of like Robinhood now.
Yeah.
You can just open up an account and then you can put even a very small amount of money in there and decide how you want to invest it. But with the saving for your kids' education, the benefit of using that particular account is that you put in money. It's after tax that you put in your money. So after you've paid all of your taxes, part of your paycheck can go towards that. But the benefit is that the money can grow in there without you having to pay tax on the growth of the money, which is a big benefit. So if you think about, like, even if you're putting aside like $100 a month by the time your child's 18, maybe ready to go to college, that's already like probably with compounding and the interest, it's like close to 70, 80 grand, right? Or something. So it's a meaningful amount of money and it's a small amount that you can contribute towards that. But like I said, the benefit is that you don't have to pay tax on any of the gains in that account. You do need to decide how the money gets invested in there. So you don't just like contribute to the account and then like do nothing with it. You generally have to pick like where it goes. Sometimes it can, the accounts automatically decide where they get allocated. And generally they also end up putting them into a mutual fund.
But if I am not mistaken, please correct me.
Yeah.
This money for like kids savings, it needs to be spent only to kids' education. You cannot do it for anything else.
Correct. You can only use it for kids' education, or I think you can. There's loopholes where you can use it for like your own education as well, but it is for education because there's only very specific things that you can use it for. You can't go and use it like to buy a house or something. You have to use it for
education purpose only.
Like
also like buying some school books, or it doesn't have to be to pay the tuition. Right? It can be anything related to the education.
Yes. So there's guidelines around what you can use it for, but it's all education related.
What are there any other types of savings that immigrants should know besides these two? Anything maybe I didn't mention, and I don't know as well.
Yes. I mean, I would say if you have money to put aside, you should be thinking about like where to invest it, because holding on to that money is actually you're losing money, right? Because right now, with interest rates being still pretty high, you can even put that money into like a high interest yielding account, interest account, and you can still probably get close to like 4% on it, right? Mm-hmm. So don't hold on to the money, even if you feel like you'll need access to the money pretty soon. And this is like going into a little bit about financial planning, right? You got to think about like what amount of money do I need to have readily available in hand, and then what amount of money can I put aside to for like my longer term goals, and I don't need it maybe in the next like 6 to 12 months. But I would say even if you think you need money immediate, like you're going to need access to some amount of money immediately, put it in a high interest savings account. At least you're getting something out of it rather than just keeping it in your checking account. But I think there's so many things that are available outside of that for longer term investment, right? You could be investing in the stock market, you could be investing in bonds, and that's where sort of a portfolio comes into play, where you should think about like how much money you want to diversify your investments. You want to think about how much do I want to put aside into like a stock market versus into like maybe bonds versus into like holding on in terms of cash. But there's a lot of tools also available. Like a lot of people maybe go towards going with a financial advisor or something for these things. But even if you have a small amount of money to invest, I would say think about like what's the time frame that you need the money in, and depending on that, you would have options. If you need it maybe relatively soon, think about putting it in a high interest savings account. If you think you can invest it for the longer term, then you have other options available, like investing it in a fund, investing it into stocks, investing it into like a bond, right? So there's a lot of options available out there, and they're relatively easily available through opening up a brokerage account, and you can generally speak to somebody at a brokerage account even to like guide you a little bit. So think about all of that as you're thinking about like saving for the future. Yeah.
So what is financial planning? Let's start with this basic question.
Yeah, I mean, financial planning is really thinking about like how do you want to use your money, like how do you want to invest and save your money and meet your financial goals with that, right? So you could have a number of different financial goals. Yes, I want to be able to pay for my kids' college. I want to be able to like make a down payment on a house. I want to, save up X amount money for retirement. But I think it's really aligning your financial goal, like your money management with the goals that you want to achieve. That's really what financial planning is about.
We didn't talk about CDs, right? Would you like to talk about it a little bit too? So you are coming from finance background. I will ask all the questions that I need to learn, and audience can learn
so
too.
CDs are certificate of deposits, and basically a CD is a relatively low risk way to get interest back on an amount of money that you want to put aside. And the way it works is the CD will have a term. So CDs can have 3-month term, 6-month term, 9 months, 12 months, 24 months, and you will get an amount of interest back to you once that term has matured. So let's say you put aside $1,000 into a CD, to a 12-month CD, and it's giving you, they're going to give you like 5% interest, so you'll get like $50 at the end of the month. At the end of the year when the CD actually matures. But it's a relatively low risk way to invest your money. And then since we were talking about planning before, I think one of the other things to mention is like your appetite to risk in terms of planning, right? Like how much risk are you willing to take for maybe a higher return? So there's different investments available out there depending on your appetite for risk.
So besides CDs, what are the other low riskier investment options?
Yeah. So I mean, obviously, like I was saying, you start with the high interest yield savings account. That's relatively low risk. You can also put money in treasury bills. That's also very low risk, right?
Let's talk about it, please.
Yeah. So treasury bills it almost works like a CD, but you're actually you're investing in like the government bills that you're putting aside money there. And what happens is the interest rate is generally low because the risk is very low. They will give you a certain amount of interest for putting the money with the U.S. government into the treasury bills for a certain amount of time. So it kind of works the same way as a CD does, but you would commit to a term and then you would get a return for...
How do they find this?
Again, you can invest in this through like your brokerage accounts.
Like when you go to the banks, they sell their products, right?
Yes.
They talk about CDs, etc. Do they also offer it, or do the clients or immigrants, when they go to the bank, they should ask about treasure opportunities?
I feel like you have to generally ask about it because it may not be one of the things that they'll immediately bring up to you. So again, if you have a brokerage account, the best way to go about it is ask somebody who's supporting you there, or even just like ask their customer support if that's available and how you can find out more about it.
And what are the other options? Like we talk CDs, treasure, what else? Any other options to do investment?
Yeah, so I think if
property, realtor, right? Another option.
Yeah, so I think you can start with like the lowest profile is like high interest yield savings accounts. You go to CDs or treasury bills, and you move up into like bonds, which are relatively still safe depending on what you're investing in. Then you get into like the stock market. And then if you have more appetite for risk, then you're getting into like angel investing and you're getting into the VC world. Yeah. That's like higher risk, higher return. And then there's the alternate investing that you're talking about is like, property, going into property as a way to invest. And those are alternate tools that are available in addition to kind of like the laid out path within in the US for like other investments.
If you are looking for a community to join, if you are a new immigrant, join Femigrant Foundation. Femigrant is a sisterhood of immigrant women coming from diverse backgrounds, ethnicities, and experiences. And at Femigrant Foundation, we organize different professional networking events that includes but not limited to we talked a lot about savings, money, etc. Now let's talk about your personal journey. My favorite part comes. I love hearing personal stories about your childhood. Where did you grow up? How was your experience?
Yeah.
What shaped you to be who you are today? About your family, parents, siblings. Please tell us your story.
Yeah, I think, I was reflecting upon this recently, just around as we were talking about money and kind of like financial planning and all that. I was trying to think about like what my money values were when I was growing up. And I'll touch into my family a little bit as well. But just thinking about that, I grew up in a country where access to things wasn't easily available, right? Because in a country like Zambia, it became independent from British rule, like in the 60s. Access to getting different things was not available. So really, what happened is that I became very creative about doing with less. And the other thing was that the cap to be able to afford something was not money. It was actually, you may have all the money you want, but you're not going to be able to go out into the store and like buy something, right? And I think that gives you a very different attitude towards money versus like in the US, I feel like your cap to like achieving or being able to afford something is always money. But like I grew up in an environment where that was not what the limitation was. The limitation was you could have all the money you want, but you're not going to find it in the store, right? Yeah. You have to take a flight to another country and then go and buy the thing. So there's a lot of like time investment and a lot of deliberation around something that you actually need.
Azerbaijan is a post-Soviet country.
Yeah.
And when USSR collapsed, the post-Soviet countries really struggled with basic food.
Yes.
And milk. Bread. When I was a child, we had to stay in a huge lane to find the bread, and money also changed.
Yes.
So we had to get some special paper, we called it talons, to give it in order to get a bread. And the lane was so huge.
Yeah.
So coming from that experience, I feel so related when you say that we had to go so far to get some money was there, but the food or the things we needed, it wasn't there. So
I think a lot of us immigrants have this similar experience, right? And you kind of learn how to like do with less, right? Because you don't like have access to everything. I remember even like growing up, like we couldn't readily find like cookies, what you call cookies here, but we call them biscuits there, right? So they're not really readily available, and we used to drive to another neighboring country to like just go to a store there to like just get like some cookies for us to eat, and then we would drive back.
Yes.
But it was like access was not there. I even a lot of things only started becoming available maybe in the late 90s, early 2000s. I remember there were certain types of fruits that I had never even seen growing up, because some of the fruits that are found locally there, like bananas and papayas, I had never seen like something like grapes. And we used to go, my family is from India, and they immigrated to Zambia in the 70s, but we would go...
talk about it, please. Yeah. How they decided to immigrate to Zambia?
They immigrated there. My dad got a job opportunity in Zambia through a pretty big company in India. It's called Tata in India, and they actually offered him to go there and set up an office in Zambia. So he took up that job opportunity and moved there. And my parents knew like nothing about Zambia, and this is before the age of internet, right? So they're literally like looking at a world map. And like we're like, oh, that's where Zambia is, and this is Lusaka, the capital where I'm going to fly into. So they took a big risk to better their future. To go there, and then 40 years down the line, they were still there.
And you were born there, right?
I was born there. Yeah, I have an elder brother and a younger sister. We were all born over there, and I basically lived there before I moved to the U.S. So Zambia and the U.S. are the only two places that I lived. But even growing up, we used to visit our extended family quite a bit in India. My grandparents, their aunts and uncles. Yeah. And I remember even going to India, even though India at that time was also considered, this is like 80s, 90s, India was also considered a developing country, but there was access to so much more stuff than we had in Zambia. And I'd go there and I was talking about the fruits, and I would get to eat these fruits. And I was like, wait, I've never eaten some of these. I've never even seen them there. So, we used to go there and that used to feel like a big, used to feel like a big occasion because they're like, oh, I can buy these toys that I don't have like access to otherwise.
Like a treasure island.
It's like, yeah.
You get everything you want.
Yes,
right?
you get everything you want. But I think it also teaches you a lot of other things, like being brought up like that teaches you a lot of resilience and also patience, right? Because you have to really be patient for what you want for and like work towards it, which are some of the values that I even carry with me today, right? And being really resilient and like kind of persevering with whatever the circumstances are to like get to where you need to be, I think was like values that I kind of learned from the environment that we were growing up in. My parents also, really put that into us. Yeah.
Sometimes we take our kids back to our country so they understand the cultural difference, value. I am not telling that they are not appreciative, but because they were born here, if they didn't go to Azerbaijan, they might consider that everything should be like this. Yeah. But now they know that, there are some countries, they struggle. People are struggling, right? Yeah. There is a thing we can do as a social impact to help others. What footprint would you like to leave to your son? I believe he was born here, right?
Yes. Yeah.
As an immigrant mom, how do you want to raise your son?
Yeah, I think that's a very interesting question and something that I battle with all the time because exactly what you said, right? Like they're not brought up in the same environment, so they have access and privilege to so many things that we didn't have growing up. Like I think about my son, he's just like, oh, I want this thing. Can you just order it on Amazon? And it's like here the next day. You're like, okay, like you really need to think about like do you actually need this like 100th Lego set that you already like you have so many. So I think for us, like we have to actually consciously kind of give them visibility into that part of the world. I think that's what's hard for us, and we have to make an effort to consciously do that. That there's not everybody that has this privilege. There's other parts of the world that are not, things don't work the way you have, and be grateful for kind of what you have, and kind of think about whether you actually need something. Like I think one of the things I try to really kind of get my son to do is, which is very hard with everything here, is that, thinking about like, do you need like all of this abundance of all this stuff, right? Mm-hmm. Like, can you do with actual less? Which is actually very hard because they're also going to school with other kids who have all these things. And then they're like, oh, my friend has X thing and I now need it as well. And you're like, do you actually need it? Like, what does it actually give you? So I ask him to always wait and kind of rethink his decision and be like, okay, if you really think in a few months you need it, okay, I'll get it for you, but like think about why you need it and what is it that it's getting to you. So at least he has some, not like instant gratification, but he's really thinking about it.
Sometimes I ask my daughter like, do you really want it or you really need it?
Yes.
If you want it, we can skip it. If you need it, we can buy it.
Yes.
That's how I negotiate.
That's awesome. Yeah, I like that. I'm going to use that one.
Great.
But I think, as you were saying, like the challenge for us is really like, how do we give them that exposure? And I think traveling is also a big part of it, like them being able to travel, taking them back home, taking them to different countries, like just seeing that everybody's experience is not the same as it is here. Otherwise, they're just in their own bubble. They got to have like exposure to all of this and getting them involved in things that's not maybe a part of their day-to-day, like giving back to the community, giving them exposure to things that they're not maybe seeing in their day-to-day lives. I also encourage like my son to like really do that, like be a kind person. You got to give back to the community. It's not just about how do you give back to people who are not as privileged as you are. Right.
They don't teach that at school. They don't teach at school what is investment, what is saving, what are the risks, right? What we should start with to educate our kids to learn about, to get the financial education?
Yeah, I think when they're younger, like my son is 9, teaching them just about discipline around money is one thing, right? Like I think a lot of parents actually practically do this, at least like in my friend circle, where like, okay, I'm going to give you a certain amount of pocket money. You think about like how you want to use that, and then you save up if you want to go and buy something else. So I think teaching them the financial discipline is important. The second piece of this is like when they're at a certain age, you can open them up like a bank account or even a brokerage account, or you can add them to one of your brokerage accounts and maybe give them access, even like a small amount of money. It could be a couple $100 and be like, okay, this is what you have access to. Why don't you think about like where you want to invest it? These are all the things that are available. You have this certain amount of money. think about how you want to invest. And I think giving them exposure to those things is important, and maybe you can do it with like just giving them access to a little bit, like a small sum of money where they can like play around with it and be like, okay, I could actually maybe invest it in this particular stock or like this particular fund, or maybe I can put it aside into like a CD or something, right? Like I think giving them access sooner rather than later to that, even with a small amount of money, I think is good for them to just learn about how things work.
Are there any resources for kids besides YouTube, like official resources train and teach kids about that?
I am not aware of anything, but I've heard that I probably need to do a little bit more research into it, but I heard that there's a startup that kind of has gamified, at least for teenagers, and like financial planning, and they can kind of learn about money.
As a format of the show, the guests can ask one question the host they want.
Oh, okay.
So now it's your time to challenge me.
Yeah, I know you've been asking me all these questions, so I'm like pleasantly surprised that now I get to interview you.
Don't ask me about money. I am not the right person. We have you about it.
No, that's fine. Maybe as we were talking about money, now as you go back, I'm not going to ask you a technical money question, but as you reflect upon early in your life, what are some of the things that you wish you had known about money?
Great question. Question. I wish I knew about investment, the differences that we just talked. What is CD? Saving for kids' education, 401k. I learned all of this at such a late stage. Maybe after 35, I learned. Yeah. But I wish if I knew them in advance, maybe I could be also one of the VC investors now.
Yeah.
Right, so that's why I am like, it's still not too late.
Yeah,
I am 45. I can still learn.
I can still learn. Yeah, it's not too late.
So I started to learn it through my own podcast. Yeah, and through my podcast, and I also listen to other podcasts about investment, startups, and money, etc. to educate myself. And now I am looking for the resources to educate my kids on this.
Yeah.
So great question. Yeah.
Awesome.
Is there anything you can advise to any immigrants about financial planning or something that they need to know in advance to avoid the mistakes that they burn out their cash or money?
Yeah, I mean, I would encourage immigrants, especially immigrant women, to please educate yourselves about how money works. If you're moving to the US, educate yourselves about how money works here. There's so much information available, and we have like AI at our fingertips now. You can just chat GPT like some of the stuff to start with, right? Like what is a good way to like invest in the US? So you have so much like information, like just educate yourself on it. I think as women, especially as immigrant women, we make it somebody else's problem. Like we'll be like, oh yeah, that's fine. My dad, my brother, the man in my life is the one who's gonna like take care of this for me, but don't do that. You are responsible for your own financial well-being, just as we are responsible for our own emotional, physical well-being. Please educate yourselves about it. Like educate yourselves before you get here, or even when you're here. It's never too late. Like start the education process and start investing, even if it's with a small amount of money.
I appreciate you coming to our studio all the way to Los Gatos.
That's okay, it wasn't that far.
For me, it's so far. That's why I'm like, all the way I'm coming from East Bay.
Oh, you're coming from East Bay. Yeah, that's right. Yeah, I'm only in San Jose, so it's not that far.
Thank you so much.
Yeah,
it was so much fun.
Yeah.
I never had so much fun when I talked about money. Money is a stressful topic.
Yes, we need to. That's the other thing. We need to like not make it a stressful topic. I think especially as women, we tend to like, I don't know, there's some taboo about talking about money. Like men do it all the time. They talk about money with each other. Why don't we do that?
We are doing it now, and we'll do it more, right?
Yes.
We will do it more. Again, I really appreciate your time to come to the studio and educate immigrants, including myself, about money, about savings, sharing your personal journey, about your family. Very, very inspiring story to see how you were able to become a financially free immigrant woman leader in America.
Yeah, thank you so much.
Thank you.